In building and modifying my trucks and SUVs over the years, as well as having spent a lot of time with other people who like doing the same sorts of things, I've come across so many aftermarket products made specifically for these trucks. There literally has to be millions of them out there. But some of these products I've had on my vehicles are just not it, in my opinion. For a lot of us, it is so fun owning one of these vehicles because they have a lot of different use cases. You know, if you watch this channel, you'll know that I daily drive my Toyota Tacomas, but I also really like to go off-roading, and I guess what some would also consider overlanding in them. In many cases, they are really more than just things that get us from point A to point B. And if you're anything like me and my friends, half the fun of owning these vehicles is being able to modify it with products and things to really make it your own, especially when you can justify it to yourself that whatever you're going to install on your vehicle is going to make it better, it's going to make it upgraded. But will it all the time? In a few cases, after I've installed aftermarket products on my vehicles, I do have some regrets. So in this video, we're going to go through a list of some of those upgrades, or maybe they're not actually upgrades. And I do want to mention, I'm not trying to attack or single anybody who has these things currently on their truck out. I would be a total hypocrite because, again, I have owned many of these items, but really it's just a list of stuff that I've thought about that I used to have on my truck and wouldn't repurchase or necessarily recommend to the masses. And some of these items are also things that I've talked to my friends about, or a lot of you guys who I see at meetups. You know, they're just like things I keep hearing time and time again that people kind of regret or would have gone a different route. But obviously, I feel like I don't have to state this, but I'm going to anyways, just in case. This is not a blacklist of products, a do not buy list, because everybody's going to use their truck in a specific way, have their own preferences. They may have had a different experience than I have had. So really, at the end of the day, I feel like this is more of a food for thought discussion sort of video. Let me know if you agree, and especially if you disagree, in the comment section down below with what I have listed out in this video. Your comments always generate some really interesting discussions, and in many cases help out other truck and SUV owners. So definitely, if you have something to say, leave a comment down below. Now, one of the best and a very popular upgrade that people do pretty early on with their trucks to improve their utility and their performance is get a new set of tires. Wheels and tires are just a thing that so many truck owners love to swap out. At least where I'm at here in San Diego, you literally can't go down a single street without seeing a truck that probably has aftermarket wheels and different tires than what they had from the factory. However, because tires affect so much about how your vehicle handles and feels every time you drive, the first thing on my list of upgrades that people may regret would be overdoing it on the load range of their tires. Let me explain this by kind of telling a story. So I've had multiple friends and family members to purchase Toyota Tacomas, and having owned one of my own, actually now two, but this one behind me owned for more than 5 years, a lot of times people will come to me saying, hey, what is a good set of tires I should upgrade to? What would you recommend? And I feel like, no pun intended, this is a very loaded question. But for one friend, what I had recommended after a lot of discussion, asking him what he planned to do with the truck, what he wanted it to ride like, I have recommended him the exact same tire I run on the silver truck behind me, a BF Goodrich KO2 in the size 265/70 R17. Now, error on my end, what I didn't mention was the load range I got for my tires, or the ply rating, which for this truck are C low rated tires. If you don't know what that means, basically the ply rating is the letter typically mentioned at the end of the tire size, which indicates their strength, durability, and load carrying capacity. So the C low rated tires behind me are a 6 ply, and the friend who I recommended the tires to ended up ordering the exact same ones, the KO2s, exact same size too, except the load rating on his tires was an E, or a 10 ply. Now, both of us don't use our Tacomas for towing anything, but we do some light off-roading. But I would say they're kind of hybrid vehicles where we also both use them to commute to work. And I remember feeling so bad because when I asked him how he felt about the tires after he got them installed on the truck, I remember him saying, well, they look great, but I didn't expect the ride to be so stiff. They kind of make the truck a lot more sluggish than I initially expected. My gas mileage has really gone down. And I'm not saying that these aren't characteristics of the KO2 tires specifically, because yes, when you go from the factory tires that come on the Tacomas to these, it can be quite a dramatic difference. Those are kind of some trade-offs, but you do get a tire that has very good sidewall strength. But at some point I had realized that he had gotten E low rated tires. Now low range E tires are stronger and more durable than say my low range C tires, but I think for what he intended to do, they really were overkill. They just cause everyday driving to be less pleasant than it actually needed to be, unfortunately. For the record, he was able to sell off those tires for pretty close to the new price because he didn't drive too long on them before getting the same tire, exact same one this time, because he got the low rating of C. And he mentioned that the truck is riding much, much better and more like his preferences now. I've seen this time and time again, that when people are purchasing a tire, they are so focused on the size that they don't consider the low rating. Yes, navigating a new tire, especially when you're not 100% sure with what you want to go with exactly, can be extremely difficult, because not only are there a million different tire brands out there at various different price points, but then you're trying to figure out, okay, am I going to go all season? Am I going to go all terrain? Am I going to go mud terrain? And then you have to figure out size, if you get a different size wheel or you want to go bigger. But I really don't want you to forget about low rating. Think about what you're going to use your truck for and what low rating of tires might be appropriate for you. I think for the majority of at least Tacoma and midsize or light truck owners, I can say from personal experience, an SL or a C is more than adequate unless you are towing frequently or running a heavier camper setup. Just remember, any excess or unnecessary weight to a tire is not just static weight, because tires of course roll, so that's rolling resistance, and that really can affect your performance negatively unless you actually need it. Look, there are a lot of good products out there, especially ones that you see online. But what a lot of people do is they see visually that many of these products either make their truck look good or look like they're going to be extremely useful. They get overzealous, they purchase it, and then in practice, they might realize this is not all chalked up as I initially thought. Now, I think this could not be more true than for rooftop tents. I may have a lot of you guys disagree here, because I do know a lot of people, including people in my personal life, that have rooftop tents on their vehicle. And I want to say too, I made a video a couple weeks ago where I detailed out, I think, like 5 specific reasons why I'm personally not a huge fan of having a rooftop tent on your vehicle unless you're using it most days out of the year. But to kind of re-summarize that video, which if you do want to watch it, it's going to be linked down below. I think rooftop tents have very specific use cases. They can work out well depending on the specific type of rooftop tent that you have, specific vehicle you have, and if you're like traveling most of the time, living out of your vehicle. Again, just using it all the time and not very sparsely, which a lot of people actually end up doing. But aside from how often people actually use their rooftop tents, I do think that there are some other negative aspects to them. For one, most of them, in my experience, are kind of a pain to set up and tear down, especially the soft top ones. You know, something I mentioned in that video was that when I've gone camping with other people that have rooftop tents, it inevitably always rains. And what sucks about putting away camp while it's raining, if you have a rooftop tent, you are carrying all that extra water because you can't get rid of everything, and you are bringing that water in your tent home. You're gonna have to dry it out. It's extra work. That's the last thing that people want to deal with when they get home from camp. But even if it doesn't rain and you get home, what do you do with your rooftop tent while your vehicle is parked? I think for like 90% of people, the rooftop tent is probably getting permanently stored on top of their vehicle. Now, depending on your home situation, that might be totally fine, but I live in a not so tall garage, so if I had a rooftop tent on any of my Toyota vehicles, there's a good chance that they would not fit in the garage, which, okay, I could deal with parking them outside, but I do like the option of being able to bring any of my vehicles in the garage when I'd like. But beyond storing it, while you're driving with a rooftop tent mounted to the roof of your vehicle, you're getting extra wind noise, you're lowering your MPG, And then if you go wheeling with it mounted on, which off-roading is pretty synonymous with overlanding a lot of the times, because to get to some of the cool camp spots, if you have to get through a tricky section, you do have a higher chance of rolling your vehicle over because your center of gravity is now, of course, higher up with that added weight. I went through several other reasons in that video of why I prefer other ways of camping, like sleeping in your vehicle or using ground tents over rooftop tents, just for me and my situation, and what I think a lot of other people do too, unless again you're using your rooftop tent very, very often. So that's kind of the gist of it. I will say I do truly love the appearance of a rooftop tent on top of a vehicle, but just consider if they're worth it, because typically they are a pretty big purchase. This next one is one that I actually had on this specific truck for a pretty long time and pretty early on into my ownership, until I realized there were much, much better options out there, and that would be a vinyl or soft top tonneau cover. This one, of course, is talking about trucks specifically and covering up your truck bed. And I will say, I really, really liked my vinyl soft top cover at first. It was very easy to install. It was also very, very light. And for the most part, it did its job in securing whatever I wanted to in my truck bed. So I was a little hesitant about including it in this list, but my experience was that after I installed a backflip MX4, which I know is like quadruple the price of what some of the cheapest vinyl soft top tonneau covers might be, or in general, just like seeing on your guys' Tacomas a lot of different types of hard trifold tonneau covers, they're just leaps and bounds better, and I probably should have just gotten one of those in the first place. And I know, again, it's totally unfair to compare a backflip MX4 to a soft tonneau cover. One is just inherently going to be miles and miles better, and it comes at a significantly increased price. But I will say a lot of other hard trifold tonneau covers can be close in price to some of the soft top ones. So why do I like those ones a lot more? I think some of the reasons are pretty obvious, starting with number one, the hard ones are much, much more secure. Somebody could very easily slice through any of the soft ones and get whatever is in your truck bed. It's a little harder to do with the hard ones. I think my biggest problem with the soft trifold I had was kind of the wear and tear. You know, vinyl doesn't look great after a couple of years in the sun. It also tends to crack. I think mine was starting at one of the edges to have a hole, and that of course was only gonna get worse over time unless I fixed it. Also, with a lot of the off-roading I did, I noticed that hardtop ones typically had better sealing solutions, so it was a lot more difficult for dust to get in. But I think the more important thing would be like water. Also, of course, the hard ones are a lot sturdier. You can probably stand on top of a lot of them and put your whole weight on them. I think for the most part, year one was fine with my soft tonneau cover, but by the time year two came around and I noticed some of that wear and tear, I thought to myself, maybe it would have just been better if I got a hard one all along. I'm not gonna knock on these too hard, because sometimes you just need something that will get the job done. Budget is a very important thing too. But if you're considering having a tonneau cover for the lifetime of your vehicle, I encourage you to look for a hardtop one. And don't forget, for a lot of these aftermarket products too, people are taking them off their trucks all the time because they're selling their truck, they're changing out their build. So if you go on OfferUp, if you go on Facebook Marketplace, you can find a ton of lightly used tonneau covers that may be basically in the new condition that will be very similarly priced to a brand new soft top one. And of course, that applies to more than just tonneau covers too. The last one I have to mention in today's video is a roof rack. Okay, this one I know might be a hot take because people do really love their roof racks, and I personally think a roof rack can make a vehicle look very, very good. If you're hauling something very large, maybe something that you can't fit in your truck bed if you have a truck, like a kayak, fair to have a roof rack. If you have a rooftop tent, also very fair to have a roof rack. You kind of need one. Oh, maybe bikes too. I think that's totally fair. But most people that I either personally know or I just see on the road, most of the time are just hauling nothing. Or maybe they're hauling cases or boxes, but a lot of times they could store those cases or boxes elsewhere in their vehicle, also in locations that are easier to access. Not having these boxes mounted on top of your roof rack also goes back to the argument of making your vehicle less top heavy, less wind resistance, better gas mileage. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm totally wrong, and I definitely want you guys to let me know in the comments what your experience is or what you think about this too. Maybe people do genuinely use that extra space that their roof rack provides to store things, but like, why do they have an empty truck bed? Maybe this is just totally something I will never understand, or people do run out of room. Now, to play devil's advocate, I think there are other genuinely good reasons besides storage that you will want to install and have a roof rack. For one, if you are interested in mounting an awning to provide a lot of shade, which I can see is very, very useful. The times I've gone out to the desert, the people that have awnings, I'm like, yes, that is so nice. We get some extra shade because there's not a lot of trees out there. You kind of need a roof rack to mount your awning. Also, a lot of people like to install auxiliary lights, light bars mounted to the top of their roof rack. So I think that's another potential good use case. The thing with lights though, if you mount them, I think above your headlight, in a lot of places, at least here, I believe it is illegal unless you have a cover. Even if they're on, you can't just have them mounted and uncovered. So I understand having a roof rack from one of those perspectives, but in addition to the potential unnecessary storage argument I provided, the trucks I've driven that have roof racks on them, or the people that own roof racks, the number one complaint is the wind noise. People do not expect roof racks to create so much wind noise, but inevitably many of them do. Now, I know Cali Ray's LED and Prinzu specifically designed theirs to minimize that effect, although it can't fully be gone. So just be aware of that. The other thing when you're installing a roof rack to be very cognizant of is you typically have to take off the weather stripping and then install silicone before putting the bolts in for the rack. And if you don't do this properly, or whoever installs your roof rack doesn't do this properly, it can suck to have leaks through your roof. The last thing I would want to see when driving my Tacoma when it rains or I'm going through the car wash is water seeping through my headliner. Man, that would suck. So this and like many other items I mentioned in this video may be one that you guys disagree with, but I think to the person that is on the fence about it, it is good to weigh out all the pros and cons. Here's the thing. All the parts I mentioned and just stuff that you buy for your vehicle in general are 99% probably going to be depreciating assets. So if you buy them new and decide you don't like something and then take it off and try to sell it, you're probably doing so at a loss. What I would recommend for any big product or modification that you want to do to your vehicle that's going to be a big purchase is for a while to actually drive your vehicle as is. In a few weeks, in a few months, if you think that that product or modification is going to provide a lot of benefit, you know, that itch isn't scratched, then I would say maybe go for it. That's kind of what I've been doing with my brand new 2024 Tacoma. You know, I bought it with a very, very specific vision. I actually have an end game in mind. But it's been like over 6 months now since I've owned it, and I honestly really haven't touched it. I mean, I just finally decided what new tires I'm going to get for it, and I ended up finally pulling the trigger, but it took me so long to get to that point because I wanted to spend time driving it, experiencing it, off-roading it as is first to really solidify the idea in my head to make sure it aligned kind of with reality, if that makes sense. This video, again, was not meant to attack or hate on specific modifications for off-road or overland-oriented trucks and SUVs. It was more so just food for thought. And again, weighing some of the pros and cons with all of these products. On the flip side, there are countless products I could recommend for vehicles. I mean, I personally think things like air compressors are always useful. I really, really like rock sliders, even if you need them one time. I'm also a really big fan of getting upgraded seat covers if you have cloth seats and you have a desire to upgrade them. But really, it all just boils down to specific preferences. But let me know, was I way off with this list? Would you agree or disagree with what I have to say? Do you have products that I didn't talk about that you would add to this list based on your own experience? I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching this video. Happy New Year's. I cannot believe it is 2025 already. I've been making videos here on YouTube about my trucks since I think like 2020, which is so crazy to say. I never really like envisioned myself doing this as a very big side hobby or to like basically have kept up with this for so long, but I just love the community aspect to YouTube and just meeting other people who also share a passion in trucks, off-roading, SUVs. I've gained so many online and real friends through this YouTube channel, and I definitely would not change a thing about it. I just can't believe I've been keeping up with it for quite some time. So it's just amazing to reflect, and thank you so much to you guys who have been here since the beginning, or if this is the very first video you've watched of me, thank you, thank you, thank you. With that being said, if you want more content, definitely check out my Instagram where I post more stuff in real time. And Instagram is a great venue for me to connect with you guys, get stuff out as it's happening. I like to post on my stories as often as I can, especially on the weekends when I'm not working. So check that out if you're interested. Otherwise, I hope I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.